August 9th, 2021, 7:30 p.m. And I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. Confirming member access. I am Deborah Robinson, Vice Chair of the Design Review Board. I would like to confirm that all members and applicants are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond. Bob Dermody.
Here.
Nelson, oh, Nelson's not coming down. Len Karen.
Here.
Chad Riley.
Here.
Also attending are town staff persons, Rana Manadorfer and Elisa Lickman. Applicants on the agenda, please respond with your name. Good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website. Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Design Review Board meetings do not typically require allowing public comment. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this board are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and that take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. I would like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from the Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote will be by roll call vote. The building department requires electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of the application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to the applicant by Design Review Board support staff. That can then be attached to your building permit application. We will now start with the first item on the agenda. I believe there's only one item on the agenda tonight, or one applicant tonight. Evan Huber, representing Needham Enterprises, applying for site plan review for 1688 Central Avenue with revisions. This is the third time we have had presentation of this project. We understand that there since has been a planning board meeting and some changes to the documents since that time. So Evan, if you want to go ahead and present to us the changes that have taken place since we last saw this project.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of brief preliminary statements which may be obviated by the comments that you just made, Madam Chair, as to how the meeting is going to be conducted. The two comments are that it sounded to me like you are not planning to take public comment. And if that's the case, then I don't really need to say anything about a letter that submitted by Holly Clark this afternoon, which I just saw a few hours before the meeting. But if the board is not planning to take public comment on it, then my observations about the timeliness of it are really not relevant. The other thing I would say, though, is that in that letter, one of the discussions, as has been raised at many these various board meetings, is the question of traffic and how much traffic this project will generate. In my view, reading section 7.7.4 of the bylaw, which sets forth the design criteria that the DRB is supposed to consider, traffic is not among those issues. So it would be my hope and request that that the board not involve itself in that issue. There's certainly going to be plenty of time for that to be discussed before the planning board. So with that, what I would propose to do is do a screen share so I can walk you through what the changes are. Can I do that?
Do I have the ability to screen share? No, I can only screen share myself. I think you can screen share.
Okay, I just wanted to ask
at the
permission.
bottom. Oh, yes, you have permission to screen share. Sorry.
Okay, hopefully this will work. Are you looking at a site, a colored site plan?
We can see the colored site plan.
Okay, great. So, so what I'm going to try to do is highlight the changes from the last time you were looking at this site plan. One of the things that I had submitted was a memo outlining the changes, but there's actually one change that I omitted from that memo. The last time you were looking at this site plan, the building had been set back 50 feet from Central Avenue. This design reflects a further move back from Central, so it's now set back 64 feet. So in addition to that, the main changes, there's been two main changes since the last time you were looking at these plans. One has to do with the facade of the building facing, one group of changes has to do with the facade of the building facing Central Avenue, and the other has to do with the driveway and pickup and drop off arrangements. So let's look at that first. If you look at this top section, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So previously the driveway was just 2 lanes, one in and one out. And a comment was made that people queuing to drop off their children would be impeding access of cars who want to get back to the parking lot. So the driveway has been widened, so it's now 3 lanes. The exit lane, which is at the top, is 11 feet wide. The entrance lane at the in the middle is 11 feet wide. And then there's a, down here at the bottom closest to the building is a queuing lane, which is 8 feet wide. This lane is long enough to allow 10 cars to stack up here, up to the drop-off area. It's also the sort of the mouth or entrance of the driveway has been changed. The shape of it has been changed to emphasize the fact that as you enter the driveway, primarily what you're entering is the access lane to the back parking areas. If you continue, you can, curve into and sit in this queuing lane, this waiting to pick up or drop off. But this has been designed in such a way that if a car comes in here and the queuing lane is full, then the natural flow for the car entering would be to just drive back along this lengthy driveway to either this parking area or this parking area. So this was redesigned in this way. Well, a couple of other related changes. We've changed the shape of the island. It was circular. We've changed it to this teardrop shape, which helps emphasize the fact that when you are coming up this queuing lane, that steers you towards this drop-off area. And then if you are coming in the sort of the main entrance lane, you're going back to the back parking areas. Once you come into this queuing area or drop-off area, sorry, you drop off your child here. This is where the main entrance to the building is. You drop off your child here, you continue around. There's a line here. There's a stop sign here. And then on the opposite side of the stop sign and also here, there's a do not enter sign. So if you are driving in this direction or in this direction, you will not pull in here. These arrows that you see on the drawing here are not just representational, they will be actually painted on the on the pavement so that it'll be clear what the direction of traffic is for vehicles. Let's see, the landscaping in this center island has been changed to junipers, and the landscaping along these two rows have been changed to a lower spreading juniper, better for landscaping, that's in close proximity to cars. There's going to be a white line here delineating the edge of the separation of the travel lane from the queuing or drop-off lane, and then a yellow line separating the entrance and exit lanes. The landscaping is otherwise unchanged, except for these changes by the island and the parking. The landscaping is unchanged from the last time the board was reviewing the plan. Including up here, we've maintained the staggered spacing that had been suggested by one of the members of the board and had been adopted in our last plan. Let me just see. Oh, a couple of other small things at the suggestion of a reviewer, a peer reviewer. We've added concrete stops to the parking area, to the parking stalls. And the drainage out here by the entrance in order to prevent any either ponding or runoff from the driveway out onto Central Avenue. A low spot in the driveway has been created, and then 2 additional catch basins will be put in there. Let me see if I can. Sorry, I thought I had right in this area here. There's going to be 2 additional catch basins. So those are the changes to the site plan layout and sort of parking and entrance and exit. And then in addition, there's been some changes to the facade of the building. So let me see if I can. The main changes to the facade are on this west elevation. And so what's happened is right here, these 2 lower gabled sections, they represent a 2-foot bump out of the daycare rooms. So if you looked at it from above, you would see extensions of those rooms. And then gable roofs. These gable roofs, as you can see, were added. They were not present in the last iteration of the facade. And then to break up the long, previously sort of one plane surface of the facade, these elements are there now to break it up, and they do extend out 2 feet. In addition, there's also these bayed windows. Those bayed windows had been part of the last presentation that we made to the board, but those are going to be maintained. So there will be bayed windows in addition to these new gabled sections. There was also an architectural eave line right here added so that it aligns with the tops of these 2 lower gables. Then another
sorry for interrupting. I was looking at the set from June, which is the last time that you presented. And I think the elevation is the same as what you presented to us the last time. Is that not correct?
I don't believe so. I have the prior elevations. I'm going to scroll down here.
Okay, I mean, there was a.
This, I think, is the previous elevation. So you see, this is the second, the most recent prior to the one that I'm showing you now. This is the elevation that had the bayed windows, but no,
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
these eaves were not there, and this bump out of 2 feet on this window or this room and this room were not there. So originally, this is the, here, I'll show you this is the first iteration, okay? The first one that you considered. It was all flat. There was no bayed windows. Then, in response to the comment that the facade was a little on the flat side, we added these bayed windows, which were intended to provide breaking up some of the facade, the run of the facade, and also provide some architectural interest. Then, now we've got this one, which has these gabled sections reflecting the extensions of the rooms, these 2 rooms.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Then also on the south elevation, just an architectural element was added here. This eave line was added just to break up the board and batten above it from the siding below it. So those are the changes to the facade of the building. But again, primarily focused on changing the look from facing Central Avenue. So that's it. Those are the changes since the last time you were looking at this a couple of months ago.
Okay, thank you. Comments, why don't we start with Bob? Do you want to start? Bob, you're muted.
There we go. I will start, but I probably want to go again because I have several, or I'm still processing. So thanks for the information, the presentation, Evans. Let's start with the setback. That increased from 50 something to 64. Is that correct?
It was 50 even, and
Yep.
it's now 64.
Okay, and how was that 64 arrived at?
If you look at, well, 2 reasons. One was we were trying to achieve basically the same setback as the Heidemann property right here,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is 65 feet. But the limiting factor was, moving the main building, I guess it would be eastward. If we moved it any further, any meaningful amount further, it would impair the ability to have this drop off because there's a certain minimum radius that you need for this turnaround area and circle. So if you move this even another 10 feet, for example, you would not be able to have this drop off design.
That's okay. Thank you. That's good to know. But that's assuming you keep that existing building to remain in the back there.
Yes, I mean, there's no secret. That's a big bone of contention. There are a number of people who have suggested that should be torn down. Our position is we don't want to tear it down. It's a perfectly sound, well-built wooden structure. We'd like to use it for, ancillary accessory purposes, including storage for the childcare facility. It is not our intention to use it for any educational related purpose, connected with the childcare facility, but it is going to be used, part of it is going to be used for storage because there's not that much storage in this proposed building. It doesn't have a basement.
Okay.
And it's also intended to be used, the roof is intended to be used as a platform for solar panels, for solar power. But largely it's, an important consideration, and this was mentioned at the planning board meeting, was that to rebuild a structure like that, it's all wood, basically, is the estimate is, something in the neighborhood of $200,000. It's a perfectly sound structure. There's nothing wrong with it. And our view is, in addition to it being quite a useful structure, to require the applicant to tear that down in order to achieve some additional amount of setback would, in our view, that's not a reasonable trade-off. Furthermore, let's just say that you took this building, the main building here, and moved it back this way so that and tore the barn down. Now you're going to have to find a place for all this parking back here. So now these neighbors are going to have a large parking lot. I don't know exactly what the circulation would look like. I don't know where we would put, the 30 parking spaces in addition to the drop-off area. I don't know exactly how it would be designed in terms of, being big enough for a fire truck to turn around. There's also a fair amount of ledge back here. And so I'm not certain of what the implications would be, but I've walked around the site and I can see that there's ledge, sticking out of the ground that you'd be trying to build on.
Okay.
So we think there's a variety of reasons why it's not a reasonable thing to tell us that we have to take the barn down.
I was not saying that, so I'm clear. I did not say take the barn down. All right.
Okay.
Someone else may have said that. I did not say that.
Okay.
I was merely asking about the setback. But there's another factor here that could be considered, and we may have visited this before, but I would like to visit it again, is that if you say that the barn, you don't want to take it down and you need the turnaround, there appears to be other land, the building footprint could be reshaped. Was that ever looked at?
So we're in a little bit of an odd circumstance, as the board is acutely aware. Mark is not here to discuss that, but I will tell you that question was asked at the last planning board meeting, and the answer was yes. There were different footprints and floor plans looked at.
Okay.
And
so if I may interrupt, that's good to hear that at least that was done. So what was the decision-making process that led to this footprint yielding the maximum 64-foot setback?
So what I was saying was Mark was, sort of much more eloquent and informed in answering that question than I will be when he was speaking to the planning board. But my understanding is that there were a number of design considerations that went into it. One is the size of the building was the applicant, or not the applicant, but the woman who will be running the Needham Child Care Center, Pat Day, who was at the planning board meeting, was saying that, she worked with Matt and Mark to come up with size classrooms that meet the amount of space that she believes is appropriate for children and not the minimum required by the state. The state has a minimum number of square feet per child. So she wanted a building that did not simply, have the minimum number of square feet per child that the state requires. That was one consideration, along with the number of children that she, wants to host at this facility, which is, her expectation is 95 children to start, and with a maximum of 115 children. That's the way she's run the numbers, and that's the way she needs to run her business. So that's the target number of children. In addition, this rectangular area over here is not classroom or, rooms sort of devoted to, individual age groups. This is a play area or it's sort of an indoor gymnasium. It's a substantial chunk of the building, and it's there so that the children will have a good indoor space to play during inclement weather and during the winter months. Anybody who's had their children at a nursery school or a childcare facility knows the value of something like that. My own children went to, many years ago, went to Red Barn School in Weston, and their equivalent of that was the basement. So when the kids couldn't go outside, they had to go down in the basement. So that was another design feature. Another aspect of the location was that Pat Day felt that it was important to design the building in such a way that the entrance would be back here, so that pick up and drop off and that sort of activity would be back away from the, away from Central Avenue. It wouldn't be taking place in view of or near Central Avenue. And then lastly, the idea was, rather than, for example, you could rotate this building 90 degrees and it would be set back further, but then you have a much longer facade facing Central Avenue. So that this was the alignment that was chosen. So those are some of the answers that a person better informed than I could give you. There may be additional ones, but those are among the design considerations that were taken into account in coming up with this structure.
Thank you. I'll let someone else go, Deborah.
Okay, Len, do you want to go?
I think I'm okay. The changes look good. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, Chad?
Sure, thanks. So my sense is, if there were no neighborhood opposition, I'd be looking at these and thinking that the responses were reasonable, appropriate. But I think since there is some opposition, I think it's always helpful to listen, to get other opinion, other feedback. I agree that we're not traffic engineers, and our role is not to suddenly try to make sure that we're doing the role of a traffic engineer or the planning group. But I think the design criteria are sort of general enough in talking about the use and scale and architecture and things that having an understanding of how the building functions and current uses or projected uses, how that is all part of our commentary back to the planning board and the site review. As I look at it, I wouldn't necessarily have immediately thought that the parking areas are inefficient. I would have thought, okay, keep an existing building, that's a sustainable thing to do. As I look at it, if the building were removed, I do expect you could probably consolidate the two kind of areas of parking and probably make a more efficient one if the building slid back. But then you would want, I think the storage is probably a real and legitimate need, and you would end up building another building further back into the lot and just expand the footprint. So there's some trade-offs there. I think the point about the building having a short facade, the short end facing the street, actually is quite relevant. Whether or not we're allowed or supposed to look at the comments, I did look at the letter that came in. There was a fairly lengthy kind of study of something called a setback ratio. I'm not aware that that actually is a requirement to the zoning. Sort of an interesting investigation, but I think in my mind, the length of the facade and the height of the building are what tend to relate to a streetscape and a setback more. So the fact that the building itself presents itself as, a single story structure, and the eve line, what was it, like 24 feet or something is the overall building height? 24
Yes, that's correct. 24 feet.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there are residential buildings in that neighborhood that are in the same ballpark in terms of overall building height. So I think the overall building footprint relative to the setback. I mean, unless there's a planning criteria that I'm not aware of, I don't think it's really as relevant. So I know I'm kind of going around in the circles here, and part of what I'm also then coming back to is there were some, there's also a letter we were provided from GPI. It sounds like the town had engaged them as an independent peer review. And there's a number of questions that are asked back to, I guess, the proponent, and conclusions that are drawn. There's an observation that they think if the existing building were removed, that it could be more efficient. So I think, it's probably as our recommendation back to the planning board, as I say, we're not the traffic engineers, but I think we would want to, in our recommendations back to the planning board, to make sure that the 3-lane approach, which I have no doubt is probably better than the 2-lane approach, is going to be sufficient. And if there are some inefficiencies by keeping the barn that has been designed, can be reviewed and engineered to be shown to be reasonably sufficient and appropriate, that they're not creating backups. My
Mr.
sense
Riley?
is that yep.
I'm sorry. I have a tendency to interrupt people. When you're done, I did want to respond to some of your comments.
Sure, yeah, I'm kind of throwing some things out there, and I imagine that there might be a little bit back and forth in conversation. I'm kind of where I was going is, my guess is, especially to begin with, and maybe over time, as there are new families that are starting in here, that there's going to be some people management that's going to be required right at the throat. I think that there's a kind of a human tendency to queue, and if you get it back up in that 3rd lane, I'm sure there's going to need to be a lot of communication with families that you can't queue on the street. You've got to bypass and go deeper in. And especially at the start of the school year, when people are kind of learning their routines, it might require, people helping to regulate the traffic, unless the traffic modeling is showing that there's plenty of space, given the frequency of cars and the drop off, that you'll never get a backup onto Central Ave. So, I guess what I'm coming back to is I would like that the town has engaged this independent peer review. They've asked some questions about the functioning of it. I think that if the existing building weren't there, you could probably come up with a more efficient parking. But if the traffic and the engineering has worked out and that is needed space for the storage, then I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to keep it if the flow can be made to use. So I think all in all, I think the improvements on the facade give it a more residential feel. I'm not always a fan of making buildings that are not residential look residential, but in this case, there's a scale to it. And I think the breaking up of the facade, the adding of the extra pediments, makes a much nicer streetscape, regardless of the use, than it had been in the first 1 or 2 iterations. So I'd like to hear some of the comments back on just kind of my observations and what was in the letter. But recognizing it's a tricky problem and a difficult site. There are a number of concessions that have been made in this design that have pushed it as far as one can, I think, if that building is to remain.
So let me respond to a couple of your comments and concerns. Needham Enterprises traffic engineer, Jack Gillen, met with the town's peer reviewer, John Diaz. So this redesign that we're looking at came out of those discussions. So I will tell you, I mean, it's my understanding, obviously I don't speak for Mr. Diaz, but he will be present at that's the peer reviewer. He'll be present at the planning board meeting, and it's my understanding that he will say that he agrees that this design is good in terms of traffic flow on the site. In terms of your comment about how there's probably going to need to be sort of a learning curve for parents, I think that's true. The expectation will be that a couple things. One is, again, and this may be beyond I believe it is sort of beyond the board's bailiwick, but just, for your own interest and concern, for the first couple of weeks, at least, to the extent necessary, we're going to have a police detail out there during peak periods. But we can also station a staff member here this is where the staff greet the children and parents, sign the children in, and then they go in the front door. But we can have a staff member here just to make sure that nobody is sitting here trying to get into this line. I will tell you that personally, as a busy parent, if I pulled into this driveway and I saw cars stacked all the way along here, I would bypass them. I'd just drive up here, park here, and get out and walk in. That plus this sort of curved, the cars are kind of tucked in here. If this lane is full such that there's a car right here, when you pull in here, your choices are going to be to sit there waiting to get into this line, or to just drive up here. We'll make it clear to parents that that's the only thing they're allowed to do if the line is full, but I think that's also sort of consistent with what people would tend to do. But certainly, this is a captive audience. Pat Day, has a lot of communication with the parents. She described in some detail at the planning board meeting how she communicated with the parents during the pandemic in terms of pickup and drop off. And we're confident that the parents can be educated how to use this site the way it was intended.
Okay, thank you. A couple of thoughts on my end. Definitely at the added drop-off lane, I think will help, helps considerably. And in terms of the elevation, I think the gables, I think they look like a bigger improvement in elevation than they will be in the massing. I think where they're only 2 feet projected. I think it's still a little disappointing in terms of more modulation in the massing that could have been done. If you want to go back to the site plan. I was wondering what happens when cars do what you just said, when the drop-off lane is full and cars go back down the main route and the parking spaces are filled. It's kind of a difficult place to then just back up if there are no spaces.
Well, I guess I would respond to that by saying that this parking lot is designed with according to 2 different metrics that the town uses for the required number of spaces. It exceeds the number of spaces required under either of those metrics that the town uses. And so, you can't design, I don't think anybody thinks it's appropriate to require somebody to design a parking lot for sort of what happens if 40 vehicles all arrive in the same 3-minute period and they're all trying to find, is that theoretically possible? Yes, but we all know that that's extremely unlikely to happen. But in any event, what we've got here is we've got 30 spaces back, I'm sorry, not 30, 30 spaces in total. So back here, some of these will be taken up with staff, but you've got 6 here. Let's say you've got 13 or 14 staff back here. So you've got 5 or 6 spaces here, that's 12. You've got 10 cars that can stack here. And then you've got another, in theory, 12 or 14 vehicles that could stack here before you even got to these parking spaces. So, this site could physically contain, 40 vehicles in addition to the staff that's already parked. It's just not reasonable or realistic to expect that more than that is going to be needed. And in comparison to other sites that I've worked on, I think this parking arrangement is far superior to other places in town where there are childcare facilities.
Okay, and I know, again, the parking sort of study has been done by others. The only other observation, I guess, would have to do with just pedestrian circulation for people who are getting out, whether it's the staff or people dropping kids and parking in the back and trying to get to the main entrance. Just the way the sidewalk is configured around the barn and back down around the south side of the parking. I think people want to walk in the most direct route. And it would be helpful to have just more of a pedestrian crossing indicated across the, at the drop-off area, at that first circle.
Right here?
I mean, wouldn't you, if you were parking in the east lot, go straight across?
If I was parking here,
Well, if you're parking in the east lot at the
Over
east
here?
and you're walking to get to
yeah,
the
so
front
you-
entrance,
so you'd walk along here,
you're gonna
and
walk,
then, and what you're saying is
I would walk
that
straight across to the
somebody
entry door.
walk straight across there as opposed to going like this.
Right, just to make
Yeah.
some, whether it's even just markings or a crosswalk.
Yeah,
or,
I mean,
you
we
know.
could certainly, we could certainly look at that. I don't know if there's some traffic reason why that's not a good idea, but I agree with you. The human tendency will be to take the most direct route. There is going to be a stop sign here, so I think the only issue is you just don't want people walking through cars. But
I guess one thing, Deb, if I can jump in, is if it was adults or this was an office park, then of course adults would just cut right straight across. But if there's any likelihood of escorting children around there, then taking them across moving traffic is probably not an optimal idea. I think that might be, I don't know if the planning board looks into those things a bit more. I'm not a civil engineer or a traffic engineer, but my sense is that you would want to encourage people to not take, at least if you were parking and trying to take kids across, that you wouldn't want to cross moving vehicle lanes.
I agree, but I guess I'd also assume that parents would not want to try to walk their children across moving vehicle lanes.
Yeah, right.
Bob, you said you wanted us to come back to you? for
Yeah,
more comments?
thank you. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Can you give us a sense, Evans, of so we see on this site plan, and maybe I believe there's a separate landscape plan, and maybe I should look there. Like a sense of, is it a 1-to-1, every tree removed, is a tree planted, something like that? Just a very general assessment of that, because I understand there are concerns about that as well.
Sure. So I would say, some concerns that have been expressed about trees that have been cut down are along here on the border with Temple Alea. I think, I know that the trees that were cut down by the applicant were diseased, but even to the extent that they, weren't diseased, they were pine trees. And if you look at, so the value of them for screening has long since passed, and all you saw at eye level was trunks. In this area, if you go there today, there's this ramshackle house right here. But this area here is very open. And this is quite open. So looking at this landscaping, I would say there are far more things that are going to be planted along here than are being taken down.
Okay. And in the neighborhood letter we received, there was a large maple mentioned, I think. Can you indicate where that is, if you know which I speak?
Yes, I know what you're referring to. I was speaking to my client today about that. And I said, is it inside the footprint or outside? He said he thinks it's just outside the footprint of this proposed structure. And the issue would be how close it is to the proposed structure in terms of, when you start digging for foundations and stuff, are you going to kill the roots?
Yeah.
If it can be saved, we'll save it.
Okay, good. And then the fence, and I was the one who mentioned this before, I would request that a non-shiny white plastic vinyl fence be used. So please use wood.
I will bring it up with my client.
Please bring it up strenuously. Thank you. And also one thought I just popped into my head while we were sitting here. I would encourage your client to consider not raising the barn, but moving it.
I don't know what's involved in that, like what sort of structural integrity, if any, a building has to have in order to be a candidate for being moved. I have been inside that barn. It's a wooden structure, so I don't know if moving it's an option, but certainly something, we'll see.
Thank you. And then lastly, lighting. And I know we've talked about this before, but I know it's a concern of the neighbors, and I believe it's in our purview with respect to the site development. Part of this site seems to be higher than some of the neighbors. So how is that being accommodated? I understand lights want to shine down and provide appropriate foot candles, et cetera, but given the topography of the situation, is that being looked at? And how is that maybe being accommodated?
So I guess the main thing that I would say about the lighting is, I think there's a lighting plan in the package that you had
Okay.
from the last time that hasn't been changed. But the main thing I would say about it is that the hours of operation of this building, of the facility, it closes at 6 p.m. So, there will probably be some staff members there somewhat after 6 p.m. But we can certainly, I think there's basically like one, if I recall correctly, there's a light here, there's a light here, and then there's, I think, 3 along the Temple Aliyah side. Other than, sort of the lighting, with the portico, but that all lights all lights can and will be off by 7 p.m. So it's sort of it's a non-issue in the summer months. And because the lights will, or I don't mean just the summer months, but,
I get what you mean.
April, May, June, July, August, September, even on the shortest days, it gets dark at 5 o'clock. And so there will be a couple hours when the lights are on, but it's not like there's going to be, irritating nighttime lighting, that people have to put up with.
Okay, but has anything been looked at with respect to the actual fixture?
You mean like shielding the direction of the light flow?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. I think
I
that's
think
certainly
it's fair
something.
to look at that.
Yes, that's certainly something that we can look at.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Deborah.
Okay, anybody else have any other comments? If not, I think we'll be writing our memo back to the planning board, and some of the things that we've said in the past that we're not going to just repeat again here will still apply, but we'll consider the changes that have been made and send along our memo to them.
Okay.
So
Thank
thank you
you.
for the presentation. I think there's been some progress. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Yes.
Evan.
Thank you, board members. It's okay for me to sign off now?
You can, yeah, please. Our next, so that was our only presenter. Our next, only other agenda item is to approve the minutes from the previous meetings. To be honest with everybody, I didn't have a chance to read through these. So first of all, I think at the last month's meeting, we, for some reason, deferred the June. So we have June 28th minutes, and we have, where are we? July 19th minutes. So we can start with I'm sorry, I'm scrolling as I'm talking. Monday, June 28th. Short of any discussion, does anybody want to move to approve the minutes? I assume everybody else has read them.
Yes, I move to approve minutes as presented for
Second,
the 28th of June.
seconded.
Was there a second? Okay. And then from last month, the Monday, July 19th minutes.
Excuse me, Deborah, don't we need to take a vote on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just not paying attention. All right, let's vote to.
I was letting you guys do your thing.
I can
I
see you.
was hoping one of you would catch it.
Okay, all right. Bob Dermody,
Aye.
Chad Riley,
Aye.
Len Karen,
Aye.
and I say aye. The
Motion passes.
June minutes are approved. July 19th minutes. Does somebody move to approve those?
I'm going to abstain here because I was not in attendance.
I wasn't either.
Who was there? Mark Nelson?
So there's a good technical question. Can you, if we all of a sudden don't, well, you have a quorum, we're just abstaining, I guess.
I mean, we can just do what we did the last time and just defer these to the next time and hold it over. So why don't we?
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
hold these until, I don't know when the next.
How do we need to move to defer them until next time?
Let's, what the hell?
I
I have a motion. Does somebody move to defer the minutes to the next time?
So moved.
Second.
Right. Second. Okay, so the July, the motion, the whatever the language is to.
We have to vote.
Vote to defer the July minutes. Mr. Dermody,
Aye.
Mr. Riley,
Aye.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
and I say aye. We will, so the July minutes will be deferred for a review, if that's relevant, until the next,
August
meeting.
30th.
the next meeting is, let's say at the bottom when our next meeting is.
Yep, August 30th.
August 30th is our next meeting.
And just a little the preview, I sadly will not be in attendance on the 30th.
Not approved.
Darn. May I please be excused?
You're not going on vacation, are you?
No, it's the night before classes start, so I will be busy prepping.
Okay, shall we move to adjourn?
I think we can do that. So moved.
Second.
Oh,
Okay.
Len beat me to
All
it.
right, do we need to vote to adjourn? This is
I
just
think
cumbersome.
we do.
Yeah.
All right, Bob,
Yeah, after full consideration, I move. Yes, I agree.
Chad,
Aye.
Len,
Aye.
and I say aye. So we are.
Thank you,
adjourned.
Rana, and thank you, Clay, as always.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
And thank you, Christopher Robbins. All right, bye, everybody.
All right, good night.
Yeah, have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Aye.